Hi, welcome to Introspection with Jeff. In my last video, I went over some common traits that I think I noticed about myself growing up, and I thought of some more. So about to say hopefully. I don't know whether I come up with more, but we'll see. That's kind of the point of this channel. Um, I remember this is a little darker trait of mine, darker in certain ways. I remember as a child in elementary school, I don't remember whether it was that period of Wetzel Road, but it was definitely Liverpool, that I would cry. I was picked on quite a bit, and as I said in an earlier video, it's not just my memory or my biased memory. Somebody commented in a video that I was really bullied and teased and so forth. And that's also another point of the video, this channel, that hopefully it will give some comfort or some guidance to other people who are in a similar situation. I guess I don't want to get into the details. I don't even remember all the details. I blocked them out. This is just you and me talking. I just remember crying a lot. I remember my mom a few times was pointing out that I remember one time she said she almost died that morning, and that affected me because of the neighbors. I now suspect it was in her head the entire time. All those years, I think it was in her head. But it doesn't change the fact that at the time it really affected me. I just remember being teased and being taunted. And as somebody now 47, just turned 47, the idea that somebody taunting you or teasing you or bullying you doesn't seem like that much. But I guess as a kid, it was very much. It was maybe there were deeper things at work, deeper feelings at work, deeper feelings of maybe loneliness, not necessarily loneliness, deeper feelings of, I think maybe it's not being appreciated. Maybe that was one of the traits that made me cry, made me feel it so much. Anyway, I would cry, and in class, like in study. Yeah, I think in class too. I remember in periods. There were periods when the teacher was talking, and there were periods when we were just doing our work. And I remember both times sometimes I would just break out into tears and start crying. And this is the darker part, sort of. When I would cry, I would I would go like this, and part of me wanted my crying to be noticeable by enough people, not enough people, by other people around me, because I was in pain, emotional pain, and I wanted somebody to comfort me, and they did. And I always liked it when I would hear, to be honest, I always liked it when I would hear somebody saying, well, why is he crying? And then somebody else speaking up and saying something like, what happened, so forth. It showed that they were concerned. I guess that's a counteraction when you're being bullied and picked on and so forth. It's nice. It's a nice healing moment when you're crying and you hear them almost stick up for you. I mean, just show concern for the fact you're crying. I thought that might fit in with my desire for attention. I mean, it does. I know I have a desire for attention. And when a circumstance like that happens, it does, I admit, it does feed into it. Not that I did it for attention, but when I was emotionally hurt, it felt good that I was getting attention. Um, and I also see I have three things marked off. I put that down. What were my archetypes growing up as a child? What were my heroes? Who are my heroes? Superman from a very young age, and Luke Skywalker. Um, the Superman I grew up with was basically the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. I didn't read comic books that often. I didn't read comic books at all until 1986 when I saw the Transformers movie, and the that was in March 1986, and then in December 1986 was Star Trek: The Voyage Home, and I remember starting to collect comics at that point, and then I collected all the back issues and so forth. So I didn't really read Superman comic books, but I enjoyed both Superman movies starring Christopher Reeve. Um, and he fights for truth and justice, um, and he's good natured, and he thinks well of other people, um, and he strives to do his best, and he has compassion and so forth. And I saw those things in me. I'm saying that I wasn't. I think I inherently had these qualities, but these were the early two figures, fictional figures, kind of like role models. Although I don't want to use the term role models because that means that implies that I'm trying to copy them. It's more like they encouraged me. These figures, I believe, encouraged me. And then Luke Skywalker. I saw Return of the Jedi in 1983 in the summer. As I recall, that's the earliest movie I remember seeing in the movie theater. I had seen The Sound of Music and probably Superman before that on TV, but it's the earliest movie I can recall in the movie theater. Luke Skywalker, again, had compassion for others. He strove to do what's best. He strove to the best of his abilities. He was capable of remarkable skill and talent, especially in Return of the Jedi. He continued to put effort in until he was successful, until he achieved what he wanted. And he also believed in his father. He kept thinking, I know my father is still in Darth Vader. I know my father is still in there. And despite Darth Vader saying there isn't, despite Darth Vader pushing back, Luke still believed in his father and still continued and went out in the end and rescued his father in the end. So I guess those are the traits that spoke to me, the earliest ones. And then from Star Wars, I went into Star Trek and Captain Kirk and so forth, and the crew in general. The spirit of Star Trek spoke a lot to me, but I think those traits were already in there and encouraged by that point, because that was 1986, and I was 10, going on 11 at that point. So this may be a short video. I also wanted to say something else. Earlier today, I was part of a Saturday morning Torah study and then Torah service, and okay, a little bit of history. Around 2012, 2010, something like that, Um, there had been somebody who had been driving me to, because I didn't have a car, I didn't have a means of transportation. He was driving me to Temple for Torah study and for services Friday nights, usually and Saturday mornings. And at some point, he just stopped driving me. And that's when I questioned, do I really want to, am I really getting something out of going to Torah study and going to synagogue for services? And I said, no. And I've covered this in an earlier video. Um, in Torah study, first of all, let me describe what Torah study is like, at least in the temple I would go to. It would be in the library, and there was a moderator who would start the portion, and there were usually converts. There would be a group of adults, usually retired adults. Sometimes, like a married couple would come in. They were usually converts to Judaism who had taken an introduction to Judaism class. Convert kind of implies that they, well, would imply that they took the effort to convert. In other words, they went through study and they made decisions to shift and become Jewish. But I always got an impression that that the people at the temple, okay, let me be perfectly honest. I got the impression that of the people in temple as being Jewish in name only and not being very knowledgeable, not caring very much. And this gets to the crux of my point. Not caring much about Judaism, not studying where these things came from, not studying Kabbalah, not studying Hebrew. They would just go through the motions and that's it. And crudely speaking, I mean, vaguely speaking, generally speaking, a lot of them were in the wealthier areas of Syracuse, and I wasn't. And part of my identity in life, part of how I see myself is that I put a lot of effort in. I put a lot of creativity and effort into something because I haven't had a lot of money. I haven't had resources that were just given to me. Given to people. So I had to work for it. And I valued, it's not just valuing, that's not the right word. It's more like being proud and value. Well, yeah, I guess valuing. It's valuing what I put into it and valuing the effort I put into it. So I didn't take things for granted the way it seemed other people were. I grew up without a mom or parent driving a car. I had to take buses to Temple and back. Saturday morning, I had to get up early, sacrifice Saturday morning cartoons or whatever in order. Well, no, it wouldn't be Saturday morning. There were cartoons or whatever Sunday morning. So I always felt out of place. So back to synagogue here, and Torah study. Okay, all right, a little bit more history. All right, so it's 2002. I just start going back to Temple, as I said in an earlier video, because I wanted to find a girlfriend, and I started going to Torah study and services, and so I'm just naturally someone who likes to delve into the nitty-gritty details. So my mom bought a nice thick copy of published by Koren Publishing, and it's called the Jerusalem Bible. It had the English, a good English translation on one side with the names transliterated. In other words, it would say Moshe instead of Moses, Yaakov instead of Jacob, and so forth. Although it did feel, I think if I remember correctly, it was something like it borrowed from the New International Standard, or whatever they call it, New International Version, whatever they call it. It wasn't purely a start from scratch translation of the Hebrews, as I understand from the preface. And then on the other side, it had the Hebrew with the vowel marks that usually that are not written on a Torah scroll, and also the cantillation, chanting, singing marks that are in the scroll text. So I started reading that. I would take that to Torah study, and typically the other people in the group had many of them had a copy of the same book, or they themselves used the same copy of a book. I can't remember what the book was. It's a large book. It has like a reddish cover, brownish reddish cover, Steinsaltz, and so forth. But I felt unique in that my mom went, and for $39, I think it was $39.95, something like that. I think I still have the book. She made sure to get me the best copy she could find, and that says a lot about my mom. If you read into that, she wanted the best for me. Not only did she want the best for me, but she took the effort to understand what she was, the ones available, and she picked carefully. She didn't just buy one off the shelf. So I felt proud. I would come in, and on my own, I would read the text, and I began reading the Hebrew because I had already taken 2 semesters of Hebrew in college, elective. I was also trying to find someone Jewish there too. And years and years back, when I was about 13, 14, in 1990, I'd studied some Hebrew enough to be able to remember how to chant the Torah portion I had. And then came a special documentary, a 3-part documentary on TV called Pharaohs and Kings by David Rohl, R-O-H-L. I didn't know much about the biblical stories before then. It was like 1996 or 97, so maybe 95. No, I'm sorry. Couldn't have been. I'm sorry, I got this a little off. Okay. Okay, I was in college from August 94 to August 99. So during college, I had seen this documentary, and it's a 3-parter by David Rohl called Pharaohs and Kings, based on his book. And it was basically a video documentary. He would go and interview people. It would show him walking through the areas that he talks about in the book, so forth. And he presents his case that you have the Bible on one hand, you have Egyptology on the other. Now, as he explains it, the last fixed date was 664 BC, when the Assyrians invade Egypt and attack, plunder, I believe, Egypt at some point, 664 BC. And then before that, I believe it was one of Napoleon's officers, Champollion, went into Egypt and tried to correlate references that he found in Egyptian hieroglyphs with the chronology established for the Bible. Now, Ussher, and I imagine some others, had gone through the Bible and established a chronology, like such and such happened in 1457 BC, or BCE, before the Common Era. and so forth. So he tried to find connections, and one of the connections was Shishak attacking Israel, and he linked that with Shoshank the first, who was a pharaoh, and then there was a Ramesses and so forth, and he linked Ramesses somehow with because the Israelites were building the city of Ramses. He identified the pharaoh of the Exodus with Ramesses, so he put the date in the he linked the um, event of the Exodus in the Bible with I know I'm confusing the two of them. Sorry. He linked the event of the Exodus in the Bible with Ramesses. So now he's using biblical dating to establish dates for the Egyptian chronology, which wasn't such a good idea. First of all, he, as David Rohl points out, he made incorrect assumptions, incorrect linkages and equations and so forth. Equations meaning equating two things. So he suspects that there were two centuries, maybe three, artificially inserted by accident because of these false connections. So then if those are like that, then if you have to shrink down the Egyptian, if you have to shrink down and take away the centuries that shouldn't have been inserted, then these events would happen in a different context within biblical history. So anyway, I found that fascinating, and that's what implored me to read the Bible. And of course, I had already had my handy Bible right there that my mom bought, and I went on the internet, I went online, and I started studying Kabbalah. And to make a long story short, I delved right into learning Hebrew the more I could, learning Kabbalah, learning the Tree of Life, learning biblical history, and so forth, so on. And with a real passion and zeal for understanding what the Bible, the codes and the patterns, and what the Bible was trying to communicate, the meaning of it all. So, all right, so that was during my college years. And then now I've graduated college in August 99, and I've gone, as I covered in my other videos, I've gone on and tried to get jobs and work and so forth. And then I go back to Torah study. I go back to temple, my childhood temple. I go back looking for some nice Jewish woman who's hopefully unattached. They weren't, at least not that I could see. I go back in 2002 and I begin going to Torah study and going to services, and I start mentioning, because naturally, mentioning tidbits about what I've learned, because naturally I'm an open person. I want to share. That's another trait. Actually, that's another trait of mine, that I want to educate other people. I want the community to grow, and I enjoy sharing. I want to share. So over time, I remember at the beginning I was concerned that these adults who would have these kind of stern, seemingly sort of stern faces would accept me. Acceptance, I suppose, is another important aspect in my psyche. But my friend that would drive me to Torah study and so forth reassured me wholeheartedly that no, they believe, they respect you. I can't remember the exact phrase. I can't think of a good phrase at the moment, but it's more like, they love you. They really think well of you, sort of, in so many words. And then after a few years, I found that I would mention something within the context, within the text of what we're talking about. I would mention something Kabbalistic. I would mention something even just in the text, the Hebrew text itself. and it seemed to go over people's heads, and they, I guess it seemed like they toleration isn't a good word for it. They appreciated me speaking up, but they couldn't really join in the discussion. So I felt like I was just saying these things for the sake of having the pride that I shared these things, but nobody could follow. I guess nobody gave an indication they could follow what I was saying. Sometimes the moderator, whose name is Jim, sometimes he would smile and he would recognize, yes, yes, as a matter of fact, and I really appreciated that, because here's like an authority figure, so to speak, a leader of the group, backing me up and supporting me and saying there is something to what this short, or yeah, short, I guess, meek little guy at the other end of the table is saying. He and I tended to sit on at opposite ends. There were no assigned seats, but I just tended to sit there, and it was nice being able to look across the table and seeing him face to face. So when the guy who would drive me stopped driving me, I didn't really see a need. I didn't really see any purpose to going back. I didn't think that I would be losing anything. I did, in some sense, lose a connection to the Jewish traditions. This is something very deep. It really should be on my bucket list. I had shared my bucket list in an earlier video way back. To be amongst fellow Jews. I hope this doesn't come across as elitist, but fellow Jews who understand Kabbalah, who understand traditions, who value these traditions, who, strange as it seems, I began to watch a documentary called Spielberg. It was on HBO, but I was watching on demand, so it's free for at least a while. Maybe it's on home video. I want to buy it if so. But in some sense, I mean, having a beard, mustache helps. He looks kind of Jewish, traditionally Jewish. But I look to somebody like Steven Spielberg, who's knowledgeable, who cares about his craft, who appreciates and knows Jewish history and Jewish culture. He's creative and imaginative and so forth. So I've wanted to live amongst people like that. And I mentioned in the bucket list, one of the items was visiting Los Angeles. And part of the reason I want to live or visit at least visit Los Angeles, is to be amongst a lot of Jewish people. I want to go to a yeshiva. And I should mention what a yeshiva is. Technically, a yeshiva is a Jewish school, like you have Christian school. Although I don't want to necessarily relate the two on a fine-tuned level. But crudely speaking, you have Christian school, you have Jewish school, and that's a yeshiva. But in yeshiva, you have an enormous amount of education because Jews value education quite a bit. You're schooled in the Talmud, the Torah. You're schooled in all sorts of different famous rabbis' texts and what they've said, and I believe also folklore and stuff like that. You get I haven't been to a yeshiva, but from my impression, you get a really thorough education. I don't think I would feel close in an Orthodox, especially ultra-Orthodox, but I don't know about, maybe have qualms about being in an Orthodox community. I'd feel welcome and confident and reassured that I'm in if I were living in an Orthodox community, that they believe in traditions and values and so forth. I don't mean values like the way traditional values are spoken about now. I mean that they value Judaism itself. And I've grown up in a Reform temple, and fortunately I came in at a time when it was starting to move away from like eating, well, not that they ate pork, but like jokes about the Reform Jews eating pork, or having it all in English. And when I would read the Hebrew, it's like nobody else would know Hebrew. Maybe you get the point. Reform had been too far, too weak a form of Judaism for me. Maybe conservative is best for me. Conservative, maybe conservadox, which is, I guess, I don't know the fine detail of the difference between conservative, Orthodox, and conservadox, but I know conservadox is between the two. So I felt alone and out of place in the temple, and I just want to be amongst a Jewish population that is like, I guess, like my kinsmen and women, and that kind of relates to connecting with my cousins. By the way, something nice happened. I believe it was Friday. I know it was Friday because I did a bit of something in celebration right afterwards. You may remember I mentioned my first cousin. I called him anticipating a voicemail because I haven't been able to reach him. It's like pulling teeth. It's been rare that I've been able to reach him or anybody else. His son I've corresponded with a few times on Facebook Messenger, but lately I think it seems like he's read my message. Maybe I haven't written anything in the text message to respond back to, but I want to say, if he's watching, or if somebody who knows who I'm talking about is watching, he does. I still think well of him, and I'm glad that we've connected. I'm still glad that he's part of the family, and I'm part of the Singer family. So anyway, I called anticipating a voicemail, and here he with his familiar voice says, "Hi, Jeff," and we talked. It seemed like he was in a taxi ride, but I'm glad that we were able to talk for those moments. And like other times, he said, "We'll talk," something like, "We'll talk soon." I hope so. Honestly, as long as I'm bearing, being naked and bearing everything out, I look forward to a time like Thanksgiving has just passed. I look forward to a time when I can be a part of that family, because I'm alone here, and like with fellow Jews and being in a Jewish community, it would feel nice. I want to be amongst people who understand me and appreciate me. So anyway, thanks. Hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. I know I didn't say that the last time. As a matter of fact, I think I recorded the last video on Thanksgiving, but I didn't say anything to kind of make it the video timeless. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye.